Good morning to all of you.
Good evening, sir.
Sorry, good evening to all of you.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening, good evening.
Good evening, sir.
Yeah, good evening. So, where were we the last class? If anyone can throw the light on.
Sir, we were in post-Mauryan invasions, so Indo-Greeks, etc. And I think we were supposed to start Satvahana today. Last paragraph I have written on Cadifaces, UAG tribe.
Okay. So, fine. So, let us then start with the. So, post Maurya, we have to discuss post Maurya. Then we enter to the Guptas, in fact. All right. So, and then Satavahanas and others will deal with the South Indian history itself. Fine. So, that is going to be our class for today. So let us start with the post Maurya only. Fine. Now see, as you remember, I had explained to you that in the post Mauryan time or the post Mauryan period, it is a period of various invasions that took place in India. In fact, a series of invasions, in fact, started taking place in this particular period, and that is considered to be the first phase of major invasions, in fact, in India, where we saw the invasions of various tribal groups, starting with right from the Indo-Greeks to followed with the Parthians and then Sakas and then the Kusanas, isn't it? So we saw about those aspects, and we had to also discuss today about the, the trade and the culture aspect between 200 BCE onwards to around 300 CE. So let us discuss that aspect today. In fact. So we're going to discuss about the development between 200 the BCE around 300 CE. Now see exactly I was talking about this issue only. So this was also the era of the development of trade and commerce basically between India and other parts of the world, especially the very famous trading route that is called a Silk Route. Now, the Silk Route is actually now again being revived in the contemporary era by China these days. Actually, it has been a traditional route right from the ancient time only. And this was the time when the Silk Route was highly developed. In fact, in terms of the trade and commerce, it was highly developed. And the trade used to be conducted from China to Europe via Indian origin. All right, that was the biggest of the achievements at that particular point of time. So in this map only you can see that I have roughly drawn here, it is very much visible that it was, of course, crossing through the northern part of India. In fact, it was crossing through the region of Afghanistan, which was actually a part of India at the particular point of time in that way. So it was crossing through the region of Afghanistan. It is Trans-Oxus River. So from here, this route used to cross from India, from the mainland India, in fact. All right. So land route was largely used for trade and commercial activities, along with even the sea routes. So in sea route, the most important development that took place at that particular point of time was the discovery of monsoon by Hippalus. All right, so monsoon was discovered by Hippalus in 46-47 CE, that is AD, and that actually led to the huge boost to the trade and commerce at that particular point of time. You can see on the screen, Hippalus is mentioned. All right, just below your screen. So Hippalus played a very important role in terms of discovering the sea route, or in fact the monsoon, and the monsoon helped, in fact, monsoon assisted the seafarers, the traders, to travel from Indian territory to the rest of course, Southeast Asia and as well as even the European area, European territory in that particular manner. So that was the biggest of the invention or discoveries, I would say, of Hippalus that took place in this particular point of time only. Secondly, you can see on your screen, right hand side of the screen, There was another very important textbook, that is Periplus of Erythraean Sea. So this Periplus of Erythraean Sea has been written by an author whose name is not known to us. So Periplus of Erythraean Sea author name is not known to us, but it is, the Erythraean Sea has been identified with Red Sea. Now, if you can see the Red Sea, see the Red Sea connects the entire Indian Ocean region to the area of Europe via the same Suez Canal. All right, the same Suez Canal, which also has been in news in last few months, in fact, few weeks back. Suez Canal was in news because of the given ship was stranded over there in Suez Canal. It was also in current affairs. So it is actually linking the area of Indian Ocean via Red Sea to Suez Canal, and from Suez Canal to Mediterranean Sea, basically. So Periplus of Erythraean Sea has been written in this particular context only to establish the trading ties with India to the rest of the world, and particularly with the European world. That was the importance of Periplus of Erythraean Sea. Now, see, these two, I mean, of course, information that we get from Hippalus and the Periplus of Erythraean Sea, which establishes the fact that India was having a very close trading ties with the European countries, and also with the Southeast Asia at that particular point of time. So even with the Southeast Asia, there was a very well developed trading relationship with India. All right, and this is something we get it from the Periplus of Erythraean Sea, and also by the writings of Pliny. Pliny, you can see on your extreme left of your screen. Pliny also wrote the history, the book history, and Pliny has been a Roman scholar, a Greek scholar, in fact, and he has also been, has explained, in fact, the trading ties with India and how the gold of Roman Empire, gold. So gold of Roman Empire used to come down to India in lieu of the textiles from India. So Indian textiles were so much in demand that even Pliny has also repented or lamented upon the kind of trade relationship that India was enjoying with the European territory. All right. So this is how, of course, this Pliny writing is equally very important in terms of indicating that there was a huge volume of trade between India and European world at that particular point of time. And from Europe, India used to import, or rather, India used to get gold, and from here, India used to export them the textile materials largely. Indian textile material was high in demand in the European market, especially Roman Empire, and that's what actually Pliny has also talked about. In one of the inscriptions, Pliny has condemned, or rather, he has lamented that there has been a drain of 100 million cisterns or sesterces. There has been always a drain of 100 million sesterces of gold from Rome each year, and half of it used to go to India alone. So 100 million sesterces were the coins of Roman Empire. So 100 million sesterces of gold used to drain away from Rome, and half of them used to go only to India. Now, this indicates that there was a profusely established trading relationship with India with Roman Empire. And one of the another remarkable fact about India, that in return of her exports, India used to also import from Roman Empire various other commodities such as, let's say, the topaz, glassware, all right, some metals like copper, tin, lead, wine, fine, wheat. So these all materials are also being imported by India from the Roman Empire. Fine. So that is how you can see the establishment of larger trade. One of the most remarkable fact that we also have come to know from the excavation of Arika Medu. You can see Arika Medu that is being shown on your screen. It is in the eastern coast of India. This question is asked to you prelims. Arika Medu kahan tha? So Arika Medu was located in the eastern coast of India, just beside Pondicherry. All right, just near Pondicherry, this particular place, coastal town was located. And from Arika Medu, we have got huge potteries. Huge potteries discovered from Arika Medu, which was made in Roman Empire. Fine. So that is how we established another evidence to establish the fact that there was a very profound trading ties with India, with the Roman Empire, even at that particular point of time. Fine. Besides this, we also have got another very important, you can say, town, or rather postal town in India, Muziris. So see on your screen, Muziris is located on the western coast of India in Kerala. So Muziris was equally a very well developed coastal town at that particular point of time, from where we have got enough of evidences of the Roman trade with India. Fine. Roman trade in India. All right. Now, even in Rome, there's a place called Pompeii. Pompeii in Rome. I'm mentioning over here. Pompei. Now, in Pompeii, Pompeii is a place in Rome. Now, here in Pompeii also, we have discovered an ivory statue. An ivory statue. Now, this ivory statue has been said to be exported from India only. All right. So, ivory statue was also exported from India only. That is what we have also discovered, which establishes that there was a good trident ties with Rome also for India. Fine. Besides this Roman trade, all these items, India used to also export the spices. The spices used to be brought from Southeast Asia, and India used to act as a entry port. India used to act as a hub of exporting these all spices back to the other parts of Europe. So spices were being brought from Southeast Asia. Some of the spices were also, grown in India, and these all spices were then further exported to the Roman world or to the other parts of Europe. In fact, fine. And we got to know about all this development that Strabo, one of the very prominent scholar, Greek scholar, from whom we come to know about all these affairs, Strabo. Now see, Strabo has given us information, especially around 63 BCE to 21 CE. Now, Strabo has informed us, or rather has given us information, that there was abundance of products used to be imported from Ceylon to India. Ceylon, of course, Sri Lanka of today. So from Ceylon, the products were imported in India, and then further from here, it was further exported to other parts of the world, especially in Southeast Asia as well, and even in the European world. All right, that is how even the trade was well established between India and Sri Lanka at that particular point of time as well. Fine. That is how we get to know about these all trading relationship between India and the Rome, India and Southeast Asia, India and also Sri Lanka at that particular point of time. Fine. So in this manner, we can simply understand that there was a high degree of trade and commerce. Besides, there was a huge development of the monetization of economy at that particular point of time. Money economy developed extremely high in this particular phase of time in ancient India. According to D.N. Jha, he writes that no other period of ancient Indian history is known for so many varieties of coins as this period is known. So now you can understand, so many variety of coins indicate that money economy had penetrated deep into the economic life of the common people in India. So that is why, because of the huge level of urbanization, huge level of trade and commerce, and also consequently with trade and commerce, development of urban centers also in India. Fine. So urban centers also developed in India like Takshila, Mathura, fine, Kausambi, Varanasi. So Mathura, Takshila, Kausambi, Varanasi, Patliputra, all right, Tamrilipti in Bengal, Tamrilipti in Bengal was equally another port. Tamrilipti. Fine. So Tamrilipti in Bengal, and even Chandraketugarh. Chandraketugarh was also another important port town in India, in the eastern coast of India. Fine. So that is how it also gave a boost to the urbanization in this particular period tremendously. And one of the very important product from Mathura called Satak. Satak. ये पूछ सकते हैं आपसे प्रीलिम्स में कि सतक क्या था. All right, what was Satak?
Sir?
Huh.
Sir, I was under the impression that Suez Canal was dug by the French and the English, and before that they used to go through the Cape of Good Hope. So, sir,
No,
Romans
it's not like that. Idea was that earlier what used to happen, they used to take away the product from Red Sea to the area of Suez Canal. Suez Canal was definitely not constructed the way it is found today. It was constructed only in 1860s, 62 in fact. All right. So it was primarily there they used to dock down the product, and from there they used to carry a small boats, and then from the small boats they used to travel the across the area of Suez Canal. So canal was not dug out; it was still as a part of Sinai Peninsula of Egypt. Fine. And then once canal was dug out, then the big ships started traveling from that area. So
Sorry.
canal, tell me.
Sir, trading port मतलब Egypt में था?
This was in Egypt, no?
Roman Empire का Egypt.
This was in Egypt. That's not Roman Empire. Roman Empire was in Italy, in Rome. This was Egypt. That was in Africa. So this area, that is Sinai Peninsula, was under Egypt. Fine. And at that particular point of time, there was Egyptian Empire also, Pharaohs. Fine. So they were assisting in the traveling of the cargoes or traders through small boats. So big ships could not travel, but small boats were traveling.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
So that is how they used to transport the goods from one region to another region. That is the point. Okay.
Yes.
So I was talking about Satak. Now see, what was Satak? Satak was a specially designed, a special quality of textile. It was a special quality of textile which was produced in Mathura. This question can be asked to you. What was Satak in ancient time? So you have to remember it was textile. All right. So what was Satak? It was textile. Fine. So Satak was textile produced in Mathura, which was always in high demand, not only in Indian market, but also across the global market. So Patanjali, another scholar, he testifies about the production of Satak in Mathura, a special kind of cloth from Mathura. Fine. And besides that, he also gives us information that there was emergence of the guild system. Guild, G-U-I-L-D. Emergence of guild system. Guild system, that is the organization of the traders or the manufacturers together. So there was guilds of artisans also, and there was also the guilds membered by the bankers, the merchants, etc. So there was huge emergence of guild system at that particular point of time, and the production used to take place under this guild system only. So the organization of the artisans, the craftsmen, now they were formed also in ancient India. All right. And these guilds were equally financiers. They also acted as a financiers to produce any particular product. Fine. They used to also hire laborers to produce any product. Top of that, the guilds emerged also as a center of economic power, because in the post-modern period, many guilds also started even issuing their own coins. Their own coins. So now you can understand that the guilds also started becoming parallel powers in India. And I told you, many of the caves of Ajanta and Ellora, if you remember the class of art and culture, would explain to you that the caves of Ajanta and Ellora, where we have got the evidences of, let's say, Buddha or many other, let's say, religious figurines. So these Ajanta and Ellora caves were developed by whom? By the guilds. So now you can understand. I mean, they emerged as so much of powerful people or powerful organization. They started even issuing coins in this particular period, and it is said that Taxila. Now, when Taxila came out from the modern empire, Taxila was controlled by the guild only. There was no any king. These group of merchants, they formed their own corporations, and they were running the affairs or administrative affairs of Taxila. So now you can see these people, that is, who were forming the guild, they became so powerful just because of trade and commerce. इतना trade and commerce था उस जमाने में, उस समय में कि they have huge wealth with them, and they were running their parallel system altogether. Fine. So that is how this guild system became highly, I mean, immensely powerful. And most importantly, they also started indulging into the judicial system also in India. So guild also started forming their own courts to award the sentences, award the judgments. So guild courts were also formed. This question can be asked to you in prelims. Let me tell you one thing. This question can definitely be asked to you in prelims, that among the following, which was a specific feature of guild system in the post-modern period. So you need to remember that they were issuing the coins, they were running the administration of cities, they were also holding the judicial courts. All right, that was the guild system. Fine. They also framed their own laws, guild laws. So they were having their own set of laws as well. Most importantly, the guilds were equally having their own insignia, banners, seals. अब आप समझ सकते हैं कि जो हड़प्पा में एक जमाने में हुआ करता था, वो भारत में फिर से रिपीट हुआ था पोस्ट मॉडर्न टाइम में. Merchants again emerged as the most powerful entity in the post modern time. Fine. And you can see India has been always a land of merchants. Fine. That is how we can simply understand by these all development that took place in the post-modern time. And it is equally remarkable fact for all of you that the Sudras got a chance to become even artisans and craftsmen for the first time in this period only. So now you can understand the Sudras who were almost discarded, marginalized, they got the chance to become artisans and craftsmen for the first time in this period only, because they needed labor force to support their economic activities. So labor force उनको जहां जहां से मिला, they started inducting them or involving them in the economic activities also. So in nutshell, in the postmodern time, Shudras also started acquiring the role of an artisan and craftsman for the first time in India. Fine. So in that way, the distinction between Vaishyas and Sudras started getting blurred. Distinction between Vaishyas and Sudras started getting blurred during the postmodern time. Fine. All right. And according to Patanjali and other you can say, Brahmanical text. This was the time which is also witnessed as the period of Kali Yuga in India. Kali Yuga. Kali Yuga. So in the Puranic passages, this period has also been referred as Kali Yuga. Why Kali Yuga? Because the social institutions like Varna system, like caste system, these all started becoming blurred. The marriages were allowed between higher and lower Varnas. A member of higher Varna could marry a woman of a lower Varna. Fine. Similarly, according to Patanjali, that the people of the lower Varna women can also get, it can be also made as as concubines, as secondary wives by the upper Varnas. So in that way, we see there's a huge intermixing of caste that took place in this period. So the late 3rd century and early 4th century CE is understood to be the period of Kali Yuga in history. This question can also be asked in prelims. Which period has been classified as Kali Yuga according to Puranic passages in history, ancient India? So it was basically late 3rd to early 4th century period has been referred as Kali Yuga in the Puranic passages. Because for the first time, family, private property, even Varna system came under attack. Fine. That is how Kali Yuga phase is actually understood to be. All right.
So late third to.
Late 3rd century to early 4th century CE.
Okay, thank you, sir.
All right. Fine. So that is what actually also started developing in this particular period only. And most importantly, this all happened due to the influx of foreigners, like Yavanas started mixing with the Indian society. All right. And they were given the Kshatriya status in Indian society. So they were Yavanas, that is Greeks. The Indo-Greeks were called as Yavanas. So they were given the status of Kshatriya in the Indian society. And most importantly, Buddhism supported the absorption in the Indian society. So in that way, you can see the Kshatriya's status, that is called as Vratra Kshatriya, Vratya Kshatriya, Vratya, Vratya, Vratya. Vratya Kshatriya's status was given to Yavanas in Indian society. Vratya Kshatriyas means fallen Kshatriyas. Fallen Kshatriyas, that is a mix of Kshatriya class. So Buddhism adopted them, or rather supported their adoption in the society. Fine. And one of the examples is Menander. Menander adopted Buddhism, who belonged to Indo-Greek origin only. Menander adopted Buddhism, who belonged to Indo-Greek clan only. Fine. At the same time, I told you already that there are also evidences of foreigners adopting the Brahmanical religion. If you remember, I explained to you, it was not only Buddhism the foreigners were adopting in India, rather, even the foreigners were equally adopting the Brahmanical religion. And we have the example in the context of Vidisha, from Vidisha, especially the Heliodorus pillar inscription. So I explained about this, I think, about Vidisha Heliodorus pillar inscription. So obviously, you can now understand this particular point of time why it is called as Kali Yuga, because this was the beginning of the intermixing of caste. It was beginning of the questioning the institution of society, family, etc. at that particular point of time. Therefore, it was called as Kali Yuga in that particular manner. Fine. Now, this is how the particular period has been seen in the context of developing various trends in the Indian society altogether. Similarly, in culture also, this new trends started emerging in Buddhism, in Jainism, also in Brahmanism. All right, like you can understand that the concept of bhakti, now concept of bhakti started developing in Mahayana Buddhism also. So in Mahayana Buddhism, Bhaktism also started developing in this period only. Fine. Similarly, in Jainism, Digambar and Svetambars, the two sects of Jainism also emerged in this period only. So Digambar and Svetambars also emerged. And the most interesting fact about this era was that Brahmanism. Now, in Brahmanism, the trinity of gods, Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh, this emerged in this period only. So, Trinity of God emerged in this period only. Trinity of God emerged in this period only. All right, and I told you already about the trident found in the coin of Vima Cadphises. Fine, I told you about the name that was used for Shiva by the Greeks as Dionysius. All right, Dionysius by Megasthenes. Fine, that is for Shiva. Fine. So in this period, these all things started developing very largely at a point of time. Besides that, even in Brahmanism, various local cults started getting assimilated. Popular local cults started getting assimilated. Fine. For example, along with cow, a snake worship became another part of the Hinduism or Brahmanism. So worshipping of snakes became a part of course, Hinduism. Worshipping of people, Tulsi, they all become a part of Hinduism by this particular point of time itself. Fine. And the fact of the matter is, the Bhaktism that was seen in Brahmanism, it was primarily borrowed from Buddhism, not vice versa. Bhaktism came first in Buddhism, then it came in Brahmanism. So this question can also be asked to in prelims. Normally, people will understand vice versa. Normally, people will understand that Bhaktism entered into Hinduism first and then it went into other religions. It's not like that. It was Buddhism which actually started Bhaktism as a practice. All right, and then finally it also influenced Hinduism or Brahmanism in India. So Brahmanism adopted Bhaktism only after Buddhism had already adopted Bhaktism. And from here only Brahmanism borrowed the concept of Bhaktism. Fine. Because the concept of bhakti was first expounded clearly by Lord Krishna himself in Bhagavad Gita. Fine. So that is how we come to know about Bhaktism. And then definitely by various other texts also we get to know, but this is said that it is only through Buddhism the idea of Bhaktism became very prominent in the Brahmanism at that particular point of time. Fine. And obviously I explained to you about that in art and architecture also this period was highly rich, extremely rich, because we have got huge evidences of chaityas, viharas, monasteries, is it stupas, and also relief sculptures. So we've got huge evidences of chaityas, viharas, stupas, relief sculptures. And I told you already, Mathura became also the first school which started producing image of Buddha. So this question can also be asked in prelims that which school started producing the image of Buddha for the first time. So you have to remember about it is always Mathura. So Mathura produced the first image of Buddha. Fine, and from here only this making of image of Buddha went to even Takshila and Gandhara school of art. Fine. So this is how you see the emergence of the various schools of art and architecture also emerged at this point of time. Fine. Besides that, this was also the period to have the development in the field of literature. Fine. So various kind of literatures also developed. Buddhist, Brahminical literature also got developed. Fine. And all those writings, especially Patanjali's Mahabhasya. got completed in this period only. All right. Similarly, the writings of Charak and Sushrut. So Charak Samhita, Sushrut Samhita. So Charak and Sushrut were also of this particular period only. Charak is said to be contemporary of Kanishk. All right, Charak, that is the school of medicine, was called as the contemporary of Kanishk only. And Sushrut was slightly of later date. Charak came first, then Sushrut came. So Sushrut is the science of the
Surgery.
surgery. Yes. So science of surgery was developed by Sushrut only. So medicine by Charak and surgery by Sushrut. Fine. So this question can be asked to you that which among the following was a contemporary to Asuka? Sorry, Kanishka. So we have to remember it was the Charak who was contemporary to Kanishk. Sushrut was of later date. Fine.
Sir,
हाँ
sir, Patanjali Shunga period के contemporary.
हाँ पतंजलि शुंगा पीरियड कंटेम्पररी है बिल्कुल
और जो सारे इंडो ग्रीक्स हैं वो शुंगा के बाद आए हैं.
वो सब शुंगा के बाद आया है ठीक है. Then we also got to know about that many of the chapters of Ramayana, Mahabharata, Puranas were also drafted at this particular point of time. Fine. So even these all textbooks got a huge boost at this particular point of time. Even Natya Shastra of Bharat, Natya Shastra of Bharat also got developed at this particular point of time. Fine. And it is commonly known that Sanskrit was always a language of elites. So elite class was speaking in Sanskrit, and the common people they used to speak in Prakrit. So the language of the common people was Prakrit, and the language of the elites was Sanskrit. Mauryas, Satavahanas, Pallavas, they were largely using Prakrit, but even Satavahanas and Pallavas started promoting even Sanskrit. It is said that early Pallavas used to speak in Prakrit, but later Pallavas they started also adopting Sanskrit, indicative of that by the time of later Pallavas, even South India was starting also getting Aryanized or Brahmanized in that particular manner. So that is how we will see the emergence of these languages as well. And most important, remarkable feat of this period was Sangam Era. Sangam Era is the most remarkable feat of this particular period. So let us now discuss Sangam Era clearly. Fine. So we are discussing the post-modern period. In the post-modern period, we also have to discuss about the Sangam Era. Fine. Now you can see on the screen, the Sangam Era is of era between 200 BCE to 300 CE. Fine. That is how Sangam Era is identified as such. In this period, we see there were three major kingdoms: Pandyas, Cheras, and Cholas. Now, the Pandyas were the main who supported the Sangam literature by conducting three Sangams in their court in Madurai. Madurai was the center of or capital of Pandyas, and this was equally a center of conducting the Sangam sessions. What was Sangam? Sangam was a religious, a spiritual, and intellectual congregation. So, religious, spiritual, and philosophical congregation of the various scholars, sages, and the priests of that particular era. So, there were various Sangams, three Sangams organized by the Pandyas. So, this question can be asked to you that who organized the Sangams in South India? It was Pandyas. So Pandyas organized Sangams in South India in Madurai, and this Madurai happened to be their capital. Pandyas also were having very famous port city Korkai, and their major, this is the most famous king of Pandyas was Nendu Chalyan. Nendu Chalyan. Fine.
सर लिख दीजिए सर.
लिखा हुआ है or not visible or
कहाँ पे सर कर्सर ले जाइए.
last में. Yeah.
दिखा सर.
Nendu Chalyan. Fine. On the other hand, the Cholas, they were also having the capital in Urayur or Puhar or Kavaripatnam. So Puhar, Kavaripatnam was the capital of Cholas for some time. Urayur was also capital of Cholas for some time. The Cholas were primarily in the area of today's Tamil Nadu. All right. And Karikal was the most famous king of Cholas. Karikal. And they used to have the emblem as tiger. Tiger was the emblem of Cholas. So therefore you see why LTT of Sri Lanka used to call themselves tiger, because tiger happened to be their traditional symbol. All right, even though I mean, of course, Tamil Nadu may not be the seat of the tiger origin in the world, but the point is they were having a fair idea about the tigers, and most importantly, they also used to have the tiger as a symbol of their kingdom. So this emblem was also used by all the other Tamilians later on as well, including the LTT in Sri Lanka. Fine. So now you can see this is how you can understand why LTT used this particular tiger as a symbol or emblem for themselves, in fact. On the other hand, we also have Cheras in the area of Kerala. So you can see Cheras were in the area of Kerala and they were having their major, you can say, center in Mujiris. All right, so Mujiris was the major center of them. And Vanji or Karur was their capital. Vanji or Karur was the capital of Cholas. Mujiris was the trading center of Cheras, in fact. So Vanji or Karur was the capital of Cheras. Fine. And this was the most famous port city, port town of the Cheras. The famous king of Cheras was Sengutuvan. Fine. So Sengutuvan was the most famous king. Sengutuvan was the most famous king. And the emblem of the Cheras was bow and arrow. Bow and arrow. Fine. So bow and arrow was the emblem of Cheras. Tiger was the emblem of Cholas. And fish was the emblem of Pandyas. Fish was the emblem of Pandyas. Fine. So we come to know about all these things through the various South Indian texts. Let us discuss that also now one by one. See on your screen, you can see what are we talking about. We're talking about a period that is between 300 CE to 300 BCE to 300 CE. This is the period we are talking about. Here what we have discussed just now, we have discussed about the existence of the three kingdoms of the Sangam era. Fine. And that we come to know through Sangam literature. Sangam literature was written in Tamil language basically, not in Sanskrit. Sangam literature was written in Tamil language. Fine. And in this period, we come to know about all these Pandyas, Cholas, and even Cheras, which we have discussed, which we have just discussed, in fact. But between 300 CE to 600 CE, we do not have much of information that what was going on in South India. So since there's lack of evidences to reconstruct the history of South India, therefore historians have said, or they have labeled this period as Kalabharas, period of Kalabharas. Kalabharas. Kalabharas means dark age or interregnum, gap. So it was a period of Kalabharas. Why? Because we don't have much of information that what was going on in South India in this period. That is 300 years. It's a long period. It's a long period. We don't have much of the evidences. Then we come to know only about Pallavas coming into South India around 6th century CE. All right. And these Pallavas and other kingdoms, they are said to have been the destroyer of these Kalabharas. So who were the Kalabharas? According to many historians, they may have been the tribal population, tribal people who actually controlled the entire affairs of South India for 300 years. They were the warlike groups having no permanent settlement. They were mainly tribals moving from here to there. So that is how they were not having any evidence. We don't have any evidence about their permanent settlement in that particular manner. So these Kalabharas were then finally eliminated by the Pallavas gradually. So Pallavas eliminated the Kalabharas, and also some of the Kalabharas were eliminated by Chalukyas as well. So Pallavas and Chalukyas, they became the major founders of the South Indian history after 6th century CE. Fine. So we'll talk about this again in the next slide where we have discussed about entire South Indian history. Let us discuss that after Gupta. So let us discuss Gupta, and then again we'll come to South Indian history once more, because we have to understand that we are entering to 6th century CE, and before that already North India, so Gupta period was there. Gupta had already started declining by 6th century CE. So after the decline of Guptas, only we'll see again South Indian history once more. Let us discuss today finally the Guptas. Now see, Guptas. The Gupta emerged as a power by 4th century CE in India. Fine. But who were the Guptas? That is very interesting for all of us to know about the Guptas. How the Guptas came, and who were the Guptas, from where they have come, and how they have again got the you can say the control over the area of the same area of the modern empire. They started or they established the capital again to Patliputra. So how these Guptas, from where these Guptas came? Let us discuss that aspect now. See, primarily speaking, these Guptas were basically feudal lords only. All right. Now, feudalism had started taking a shape by the time of the Satavahanas itself. Satavahanas are said to be the beginners of feudalism in India. So, if a question is asked to you that which dynasty supported or started the practice of feudalism in India, the answer is going to be Satavahanas. Satavahanas. Now, why Satavahanas? See, as I have already told to all of you, that the Satavahanas, they emerged in the backdrop of the social tension that was still there in India between Brahmanism versus Buddhism. Brahmanism versus Buddhism, and in the backdrop of this tension only, Satavahanas emerged as a upholder of the Brahmanical ideology again back into India. So the capital of Satavahanas was Pratishthan or Patan in Maharashtra. Pratishthan or Patan was the capital of Satavahanas. This question is also asked to you in prelims. Pratishthan or Patan. All right, so Paitan, that's what actually how you spell it. So this was the capital of Satavahanas. So they actually became the upholder of the Brahmanical, you can say the order back into India, especially in the Deccan area. And once they came into power, they wanted to again rejuvenate the Brahmanical dominance in the society. And by the time of the so-called, let's say, the modern empire and even under the Buddhism influence, the position of Brahman actually started degrading or declining. So they wanted to again reinstitute the Brahminical dominance in the society, and because of that only you can see they started giving lands, donating lands. So land donation began as a very formidable practice by them. And once they started donating lands to the Brahminical priest, so Brahminical priest, they were the major beneficiary of the land donation. It does not mean that the others did not receive the land. It is always to be recalled and to be reminded by to all of you that the lands were gifted not only to the Brahmins, it was equally gifted even to the Buddhist monasteries and even to the Jaina monasteries. So idea is that only the Brahmins did not get the land. In fact, even the other religious institutions, they also started getting the land support by the king. So they started receiving the land, and not only the land rights, but also the rights over the resources on the land, and apart from that, even the right to conduct the judicial power of the land. Judicial authority was also given to the land holder. That is how the feudalism started increasing gradually. Fine. And the people who were working upon the land, they were supposed to serve. They were supposed to serve to their masters. So the suppose they were already farmers or peasants doing farming on the land, they were also supposed to do farming on the same land. So along with the land, even the farmers were also gifted to them. All right. So farmers now had to serve to the new master who became the new landlord at that particular point of time. Fine. So they started even taking from these farmers a practice of vishti became very common. Vishti means forced labor. Vishti, I meant to mention over here Vishti, forced labor. This is what actually was the beginning of the so-called the Vishti practice in India by this particular point of time itself. So forced labor also became a part of feudalism in India at this point of time itself. Then you can see here that by the time of Satavahanas got over, the practice of land donation became quite rigid. And the same practice also was continued by the Guptas and even by the contemporary Vakatakas. Guptas and Vakatakas were relatives. They were relatives. Guptas were controlling the affairs of entire North India, and Vakatakas came after the Satavahanas' decline in Deccan area. All right. So Guptas and Vakatakas continued the practice of land donation under them only, and it is said that the founder of Gupta was Sri Gupt. Founder of the Guptas was Sri Gupt, and since it became such a dominant practice of land donation, not only in the south but also in North India, because in North India the the Kushanas were ruling. Kushanas were still ruling in North India. So it is said that the areas of Mathura nearby western UP were gifted by the Kusanas to Sri Gupta. Now see on the screen, Guptas were mainly the feudatory of Kusanas. Fine. So they became a dominant power in North India gradually. In south, already Satavahanas started the practice of land grants, and through the inscriptions of Nana Ghat, we come to know that not only land but also tax exemption was given on the land by the state. So, in other words, it simply means that you don't have to now pay any tax to the state, to the government, to the king. That practice started developing at the point of time. And by 240 CE, you can see here, Sri Gupt, he was the founder of Guptas. Sri Gupt had already established the control in the western UP area as a feudatory once Kusana declined outrightly. So, with the decline of Kusana, you can see on the screen, Sri Gupt, he founded the Gupta dynasty in 240 CE. And his son was Ghatotkacha. Ghatotkacha was his son. So Ghatotkacha came afterwards, and by the time of Chandragupta I, Gupta became immensely powerful kingdom in entire North India. So Chandragupta I is said to be the real founder of the Gupta dynasty because Chandragupta I has taken the title of Maharaja Dhiraj. Now, Maharaja Dhiraj was the title that was taken by Chandragupta I. All right. Now, this title itself indicates that he was ruling over various Maharajas. Therefore, he used a title called Maharaja Dhiraj, मतलब King of Kings. King of Kings मतलब क्या है? मतलब साफ है कि ये जो King of Kings था वो बहुत सारे छोटे-छोटे feudatories के ऊपर ये ruler था. So in other words, he was called as Maharaja Dhiraj, indicative of that already the entire political structure of Gupta, or rather by the time of Guptas, it was highly feudatory. So there were various feudatories in entire region of Guptas, and among them, the most powerful was the Gupta dynasty. So he was controlling over all these feudatories. That was the structure of Gupta dynasty altogether. Fine. So, however, he has been credited to that. That is, all feudatories, they all accepted the rule of Guptas. They all became subservient to the Guptas. That was the biggest achievement for all of us, for the Guptas in fact. So in that way, he unified India. Political unification was provided by him. Capital of Gupta was again Patliputra. So again, Bihar became the focus of the ancient India altogether. Fine. And from Patliputra only, he was controlling the different parts of India. For example, we have got the inscriptions like Mehroli Iron Pillar. Now, Mehroli Iron Pillar is the biggest of the evidences that still exist in front of us. You can now imagine this Mehroli Iron Pillar is said to be of the era of Chandragupta II. Chandragupta II, who was the son of course, Samudragupta. Alright. So you can now understand that Chandragupta II, a son of Samudragupta, was son of Chandragupta I. So his pillar inscription is still alive in front of us. Fine. Most importantly, Allahabad pillar inscription is equally there. That is of Samudragupta. Samudragupta was son of Chandragupta I. And let me tell you, it was Samudragupta who has also been, you can say, compared with Napoleon of India by the Western scholars. However, this comparison is very flawed one, a misnomer one, but still the Western scholars have compared this particular ruler of India with Napoleon of India. It is all because that he was having an imperialist ambition. He wanted to acquire a big, vast empire for himself. That is why he was remembered as Napoleon of India. So see here, Kusanas was now finally eliminated. Kusanas were having capital in Takshila, that is called as Purushpur and Mathura in UP. Now the capital is shifted to Patliputra. So again, the focus of Indian history was shifted to Patliputra. So the story of Guptas we come through various texts like Vishak Dutt, wrote Mudra Rakshas. All right, Devi Chandraguptam. So Visakdath wrote two books, Devi Chandraguptam and Mudra Rakshas. So Mudra Rakshas is a great source on the Mauryas, and Devi Chandraguptam is a great source upon the Guptas. Devi Chandraguptam and Mudra Rakshas are the two textbooks written by Visakdath in the Gupta period. All right.
So, what was the other one? Devi Chandra?
Guptam.
Okay.
All right. So Visakdath writing is another very great source for all of us to reconstruct the history of Guptas, and most importantly, the scholar of this period was Kalidas. So Kalidas happened to be the most important scholar of you can say a scholar par excellence at that period in terms of writing the pure chast Sanskrit, and of course various textbooks written by Kalidas. Avigyan Sakuntalam is a masterpiece of Kalidas. All right. Apart from that, uh, Meghdut, fine. So this is also another very famous book of Kalidas. So Kalidas has been a renowned scholar of the Turkic era, and he was contemporary to, of course, Chandragupta and Samudragupta in that way. Fine. You can see here Chandragupta first was succeeded by Samudragupta, and Samudragupta era is actually known to us through Allahabad inscription. Allahabad inscription was written by Hari Sen. He was a court poet of Samudragupta. So Hari Sen drafted the Allahabad inscription, and in Allahabad inscription we come to know about the imperial ambition of Samudragupta. For example, in the north, 9 republican kingdoms were conquered by Samudragupta. 9 republican kingdoms were conquered by Samudragupta. In the south, of course, even 12 rulers were equally conquered by Samudragupta. So 9 in the north and in the south, 12 rulers were conquered by Samudragupta. That is how he was having a high imperial ambition. That's the reason I just told you. He has been also compared as Napoleon. As Napoleon of India by the Western scholars. Irony is that he was much ahead than Napoleon era. Still, he has been compared as Napoleon of India. This actually is the Western perspective of looking into Indian history. Fine. However, the next important ruler of India was Chandragupta II. He was also called Chandragupta Vikramaditya. So Chandragupta Vikramaditya or Chandragupta II was same, and his story we come to know from Mehroli Iron Period inscription. Fine, that was the most important information about Chandragupta II Vikramaditya. Fine, and the very famous story of Vikram Betal. Vikram Betal was a story of Chandragupta Vikramaditya only. Fine, so this is another very popular story among the kids in India, Vikram Betal. So that is also from Chandragupta Vikramaditya story only. Fine. So his successor was Kumar Gupta. Kumar Gupta is known for establishing Nalanda University in India. So he set up Nalanda University, and he also took the title of Sakraditya. Sakraditya because he said that he has been able to defeat Sakas. Sakas were defeated by him, so that's the reason why he took a title of Sakraditya. Skandagupta was the last recognized Gupta ruler because Skandagupta era faced a huge challenge in the form of Huna invasion. So Huna invasion increased from Central Asia again. So you can see India has always been vulnerable from Central Asian region itself. Every next time you see one or the other invaders invaded India from Central Asia only. And whenever this centralized empire got weakened, India became very vulnerable. And it was always from northwest invasions took place. So therefore, even today, India is constant threat. India lives in the constant threat only from northwest. So you can see what is happening today in the context of the influx of terrorists in Kashmir. All right, it is something that India has been facing right from its ancient time. And wherever central government became weak, the invasions started increasing. You can relate that story with the contemporary era also. Fine. So if you have a centralized government or centralized powerful government, you can see invasions are being checked. But the day when you get the another government which is weak enough, you see invasions increase tremendously in India. So that is how India has been facing the same problem since ancient days. So you can see Hunan invasion increased tremendously. It actually weakened the empire altogether. And then finally by 540 CE, Gupta's declined. So last recognized, or the last we can say known ruler of Gupta was Vishnugupta. So Vishnugupta was last known ruler of Gupta in 540 CE, and afterwards Gupta lost in oblivion. Guptas were lost in oblivion. All right. But out of this entire development, there are few remarkable developments for all of you to remember, in fact, about Samudragupta. Now, Samudragupta is said to have promoted Vaishnavism in India. He is also said to be called as Kaviraj because he was a great lover of poetry and music, and his quotes has been shown as playing lute or veena. This question is asked to in prelims that whose quotes have depicted the king playing veena or lute? It is Samudragupta. So he was playing lute or veena also. At the same time, he also allowed, or rather, he permitted Meghavarman, the king of Sri Lanka. Alright, so Meghavarman sent present and tributes to him and also requested for a permission to build a Buddhist monastery in Gaya. Fine. And Guptas were having the royal Garud as their royal emblem. Garud was their royal emblem. Now, in the era of Chandragupta II, we got some major achievements of the Gupta's period, such as Patliputra was already a capital, but Ujjain also became a significant capital of the Guptas. And Kalidas belonged to Ujjain only, who was brought to Patliputra by Chandragupta II. So Kalidas hailed from Ujjain only, and finally he was brought to Patliputra by Chandragupta Vikramaditya. It is said that in Chandragupta Vikramaditya's court there was Navaratnas, nine great scholars or nine scholars who were there in the court of Chandragupta II. Like Kalidas was one among them, Dhanvantri, the very famous physician of that era. Dhanvantri was doctor, so he was a very famous physician of this era, along with Amar Simha, who is said to have written a lexicography that is grammar. Alright. So Amar Simha is said to have written the lexicography, that is grammar of Sanskrit at a point of time. Chandragupta Vikramaditya issued even the silver coins, and he is known for establishing matrimonial alliances with Vakatakas. His daughter Prabhavati was said to be married with Vakataka king. That is how matrimonial alliances were established by him. The last major achievement of his was that he was also able to set, or rather, he was also said to be establishing, or rather, starting the Vikram era of 57 BCE to have new calendar based upon Vikram era. However, the modern calendar of India, we follow Saka era, that is from 78 CE. This is Saka era. So Indian calendar follows Saka era, but at this particular point of time, Vikram era was started by Vikramaditya only from 57 BCE. So it is said that there was some more Vikramaditya was a title. So various rulers used to take this title of Vikramaditya. So there was one Vikramaditya also ruler there in Ujjain who actually started this particular era, 57 BCE itself, which was also adopted by him in this particular period. That is the story regarding Vikram era. Fine. Last but not the least, Fahian, the Chinese scholar, he is said to have visited in the era of Chandragupta Vikramaditya only. This question can also be asked to you that in which era Fahian visited India? Fahian visited India during the time of Chandragupta Vikramaditya only.
सर
हाँ,
सर आज जो न्यू ईयर है उसका कोई रिलेशन है इससे?
आज जो न्यू ईयर है उसका रिलेशन सका एरा से ही है. ठीक है, सका एरा सो है, आज से मानते हैं, यही है. तो जो हिंदू कैलेंडर है वो सका एरा से ही बेस्ड है.
सर फिर उसको विक्रम संवत क्यों बोलते हैं?
सका एरा विक्रम संवत दोनों यूज किया जाता है इंडिया कैलेंडर को बनाने में. ठीक है, तो आप पढ़ेंगे इंडिया एयर बुक में, उसमें भी दिया हुआ है सब इंफॉर्मेशन. ठीक है. So now let us complete it. So of course the political system of Gupta was like this way. It was monarchy, there was no doubt about it. And about the political system of Gupta, we come to know from Kamandak Nitisar. So Kamandak Nitisar was a scholar. In fact, Kamandak was a scholar and he wrote a book called Nitisar. It is compared with Kautilya's Arthashastra. So Kamandak Nitisar is compared with Kautilya's Arthashastra, and it provides us an elaborate description about the administrative system of the Guptas. Undoubtedly, in the Guptas, feudalism had already taken a root, permanent root in India, even though there were administrative officials who used to look after the affairs of Guptas, like Kumara Bhattyas were the high officials inside the Gupta administration. Kumara Bhattyas' salary was given in the form of land donation. This is what actually how feudalism began. They were given in the form of land donation by the Guptas. Most importantly, the post of Kumara Bhattyas also became hereditary, and the land enjoyed by them also started getting hereditary in terms of the rights over the land. The best example is Hari Sen himself. Hari Sen was also a feudal lord. He was the son of a priest who was also having the designation of Kumara Bhattyas in the court of the Guptas. Fine. They were also having army. Our army was under the control of Mahabaladhikrit. So chief of army in the Guptas were called as Mahabala Dikrit. Mahabala Dikrit. Alright. And this post was equally hereditary. So now you can see almost all the posts in the administration, in defense, were given to, or rather were converted to hereditary rights as well. And the taxes in the Guptas were like this way. The Guptas used to collect taxes like Bhag, Bali, Bhog, and Kar. So there are various forms of taxes collected by Guptas. Bhag was 1/6 of the total produce collected from the farmers by the Gupta king. Bhag. Bali was voluntary offerings to the army by the people out there. Bhog was given in the form of kinds always, that is fruit or flowers. And Kar was a periodic tax on the villages in the Gupta period. So Bhag, Bali, Bhog, Kar are some of the taxes of the Gupta period, which was largely found in the Guptas. Guptas are also known for issuing maximum number of gold coins, which are called as dinars. Maximum number of gold coins were issued by Guptas. This question can be asked to you. First gold coin was issued by whom? First gold coin.
Indo-Greeks.
Indo-Greeks, right. And the maximum number of gold coins are issued by the Guptas. And the purest form of gold coin? Purest form of gold coin?
Kushanas.
Kusanas, that's right, right. So purest form of gold coin was issued by Kusanas, first gold coin was issued by Indo-Greeks, and the maximum of gold coins issued by the Guptas called as dinars. Alright, so dinar later became the coin of the Gulf countries. So that is how dinar was the invention of the Guptas basically. Fine. Then silver coins, I told you, was issued for the first time by the Chandragupta II also. Fine. And why he issued silver coins? After defeating Sakas in Gujarat, he released silver coins. Copper coins were also issued by the Guptas, but they were very less. Now, this copper coin being less indicative of what? That the local transactions in the Gupta period was becoming more of barter system. Less number of copper coins indicate what? Barter system. This question can be asked in prelims. That during the Guptas, there were very less evidences of copper coins in circulation. Indicates what? So it indicates that barter system had taken a permanent shape due to feudalism in Gupta period. Because in feudalism, it does not promote trade and commerce. Fine. So since trade and commerce is not promoted, so in that way, there's no need of even the local currency to be issued in copper coins, and this is what even Fahian admits. Fahian admits that Fahian says when he went to Patliputra, he was surprised to see that in Patliputra, the people who were doing the local transaction either in the form of barter or in the form of use of cowries. Cowrie. जो हमारे बोलचाल की भाषा में कौरी जो है वर्ड ऐड हो गया। हम लोग बोलते हैं कि तुम्हारा जो मोल है कौड़ी के भाव नहीं बिकेगा, है ना। इस कौड़ी के भाव नहीं बिकेगा मतलब क्या है, दैट कौड़ी actually was a practice in the Gupta period used by the people out there to conduct the local transactions. So the small transactions used to take place through the cowries only. So therefore, the cowrie didn't have the high value, all right, and it was mainly the semi-precious stones that is derived from the riverbed area. Fine. So cowries are derived from the riverbed area. So in that way, cowrie was used for local transactions, and this was reported by even Pahiyar. All right. So in the core of the Gupta area, that was a condition. And the same guild that we have talked about in the postmodern period, now the guild started losing their significance gradually. Guild was now located only in the port areas like Tamrilipti, Kalyan, Chaul. They were the ports. Tamrilipti was in Bengal in the eastern coast. Kalyan and Chaul were there in Maharashtra in the western coast. So these ports were there on which the existence of some guild system was there, and these guilds were also formed into the organization of Shrenis. So Shrenis were the merchants, and they were supported by Sartavaha, that's called as Karwa traders. Karwa traders. So they were in existence, but very few during the time of the Guptas.
So what was the Shreni's point?
Shrenis were the merchants.
Okay.
Shrenis were the merchants. Merchants were called as Shrenis, who used to form their unions in the form of guild system. And the Sartavaha were the carbon traders who used to assist the Shrenis. How they used to carry the products, carry the goods from one place to another place. All right. They were Banjaras like people. Fine. So Banjaras, what Banjaras used to do, they used to carry the product from one region to another region in India. They were the Sartavahas also. Now, society in Gupta time was completely classified in the four Varna system. And the most important aspect of Gupta time was the emergence of another class called Chandalas. Chandalas or untouchability had come into existence on a formidable ground in the Gupta period itself. So Chandals, they were the lowest of the people in the strata of Indian society at that particular point of time. They were mainly untouchables. They had been derived from the Sudras only. Fine. So Sudras started practicing agriculture by this time, and many of these Sudras they also got degraded to the status of Chandalas, who happened to be called as untouchables altogether. And even Fahian reports that the Chandalas in the Gupta time or during the Gupta time, they were supposed to enter in the urban city or city area during a specified period. They cannot enter at any point of time in urban area. Firstly, secondly, they were supposed to carry a stick, and they had to hit those stick on the road while crossing the road so that the others, especially the Orthodox Hindus, now they must come to know the Chandalas are crossing. So they had to go away even from the shadow of these Chandalas. So that is what actually was a practice that got very much formidable by this particular point of time. Fine. Manu Smriti, that is the law book of Orthodox Hindus, was drafted at this particular point of time by Manu only. All right. So the Manu Smriti got completed at this particular point of time, and it actually defined the rule of family, rule of society very clearly under this Manu Smriti. So Manu Smriti used to, or the Manu Smriti used to support the idea of keeping Chandalas away from the Orthodox Hindu family or Hindu society at a point of time. Not only that, but it also used to support Stri Dhan. Stri Dhan, which actually established the practice of dowry system in India. Stri Dhan, under which the women used to also have the rights over their jewelries, their precious stones, gold, silver, etc. And during the marriage, the Stri or the women, they had to carry away these all properties to the place where they are going to be married or to the place of their groom. So at the groom's place, they had to carry away those all property in the form of the movable property, in fact. That is how Stridhan practice also got well established during the time of the Guptas, which later on developed into a dowry system in India altogether. Fine. Then Sati practice was also started by this time formidably. And the very first inscription of Iran inscriptions of MP is the first written evidence. Idea is Sati was also practiced before it, but Iran inscription is the first written evidence in the form of archaeological evidence which proves the fact that Sati was well practiced in India in 510 CE. All right, so in nutshell, feudalism and patriarchy with Brahmanical order, it got highly concretized during the time of the Guptas only. Fine, that was the point. And you can see here that some of the scholars have said Gupta era as a golden age. Now, golden age, why? Because according to those scholars, in this era, gold coins were largely issued. However, this is a wrong conception, a misnomer conception. Gupta age has now not been considered as a golden era, golden age. Rather, the golden age theory has been rejected by the modern scholars. Why? Because the golden age need to be understood from the perspective of the common man of that era. Common man like peasants, artisans, laborers, Sudras, Chandalas, women, now their condition became highly deplorable during the Gupta period. Exploitation of peasants increased tremendously because of land donations. Artisans, craftsmen, their occupation were also almost degraded or removed. Laborers had become landless laborers. Sudras had turned out to be Chandalas. Women became, of course, again ostracized, discriminated. So, therefore, this era cannot be called as a golden era. However, it can be called as a classical era of literature and art and culture. So, it should not be called as a golden era, rather, it should be called as a classical era due to the growth in literature, in Sanskrit literature in this particular period of time. These scholars like Varah Mihir, Kalidas, Bhavbhuti, Visakhadat, Aryabhat, Brahmagupt. I mean, see, this is a line of chain of scholars. I mean, you have more than 20, 30 scholars of this political period who actually contributed in every field of human intellect. It was not only in literature, like Kalidas contributed, rather even in the field of science and technology, like Aryabhat and Varahmihir contributed. So, of course, you can see Aryabhat, Varahmihir, Brahmagupt, they were the people of scientific temperament, and they were the biggest scholars in the field of science till today. So, obviously, you can see Bharat Samhita written by Varahmihir, which was one of the earliest textbooks on astronomy and geometry. All right. Similarly, Aryabhat, Brahmagupt, now who has been called as a inventor of decimal system of zero, was invented by them. So zero was a concept invented by him, Brahmagupt. So these all scholars are really remarkable of the Gupta era, and their contributions are still cherished even in the contemporary era. So that was precisely the golden era for these people, golden era for the scientific inventions, golden era for literature. So therefore, it is right to call, it is correct to call this was a golden era only for literature, not for the people at large. So here, the scholars have come to this conclusion. It should be called as a classical era of literature. That is the perfect word for the Gupta era. Classical era of literature and art and culture. That is how Gupta era has to be seen. So golden era theory is now not accepted. Fine. So told you about Aryabhat, Lord Aryabhatiam, and Brahmagupt Surya Siddhanta became the quite famous books, which are still referred by many of these scientific scientists, you can say, in the world even till today. All right, so that's how Brahmagupt and Aryabhat has been or have been able to contribute to the field of science and technology in the world from India. Fine, that is how we have to see these scholars. So that is how the Gupta era came to an end. All right, Gupta era finally declined by 6th century, early 6th century BCE itself. And behind the decline of the Guptas, the factors have been attributed by the scholars. It was largely feudalism. So it was mainly feudalism which contributed to the decline of the Guptas. And with the weak rulers, top of that Huna invasion, lack of monetization, lack of economic activities. Now these all factors played a role in the decline of the Guptas. And once Guptas declined, what do we notice? We notice the emergence of full-fledged feudalism in India. Full-fledged feudalism in India till the era of Harshvardhan, there was some sort of centralized control to some part of India. But after the death of Harshvardhan in 647 CE, we see India was completely engulfed under the black hole of feudalism. All right, it was completely engulfed under the black hole of feudalism, and then finally we see in this period that is called 7th century CE or 6th century CE, with the decline of Guptas, the power of the center of power in India, it shifted to South India. So center of power in India shifted from north to south with the decline of the Guptas only. And here we see the rise of Pallavas, Chalukyas, and Cholas. So Pallavas, Chalukyas, and Cholas came in the 6th and 7th century CE after the decline of the Guptas only. Fine. There was one brief stint of Harshvardhan between 606 to 647 CE, who was the last Hindu ruler of ancient India. And this person, Harshvardhan, he is a ruler of North India from Thaneshwar, that today's Haryana area. All right, Haryana to Western UP, that was the area of Harshvardhan. And he belonged to the Vardhan dynasty. Prabhakar Vardhan was the father of Harshvardhan, who led the foundation of Vardhan dynasty. So even Prabhakar Vardhan happened to be one of the feudal lords of the Gupta era. Fine. So in Prabhakar, I was talking about Prabhakar Vardhan. So Prabhakar Vardhan, he happened to be the founder of the Vardhan dynasty, and he was having three children. Rajavardhan was the eldest son, Rajasri was the daughter, and Harshvardhan was the younger son. Fine. It was Harshvardhan who commanded the throne of Thaneshwar after the killing of Rajavardhan by Shashank of Gauda. The Shashank of Gauda, they were ruling in the area of Bengal and some of the areas of Odisha. So Bengal and Odisha was the center of Shashank of Gauda, and they were having a rivalry against each other. So Shashank of Gauda is said to have killed Rajavardhan, the elder son of Harshvardhan, and also the brother-in-law of Harshvardhan. He was Grivarman. Grivarman was the king of mockeries. In Bihar, at that particular point of time, there was a mockery dynasty. Mockery dynasty was there in Bihar under Grivarman. So Grivarman was killed by Shashank of Gauda, who happened to be the husband of Rajasri. So Rajasri is said to have, going for committing suicide, but somehow Harshvardhan came to know, and Harshvardhan is said to have saved the life of Rajasri by taking her away from the pyres on which she was about to throw herself. So Rajasri was somehow saved by Harshvardhan, and Rajasri was designated as the queen of mockeries by Harshvardhan. So Rajasri is said to have ruled with Harshvardhan for some time, but she did not like this, and then finally she also got converted into Buddhism. So Rajasri became also a Buddhist nun. It was the letter of her life. Harshvardhan initially was a Saivite, but he came under the influence of Hinsang, and when Hinsang visited the court of Harshvardhan, he propagated the philosophy of Buddhism before him, and that's how he became so influenced by Hinsang that he agreed to convert himself into Buddhism. So Harshvardhan is said to have been converted into Buddhism by Hinsang. And Harshvardhan era, or in fact entire Vardhan era, we come to know by the writing of Banabhat. Banabhat wrote two very important books, Harshcharit and Kadambari. Kadambari or Harshcharit were the two very famous books of Banabhat. And it was in Harshcharit, that is the biography of Harsha, that is Harshvardhan, we come to know about this entire life story of Harshvardhan like this way. So Banabhat wrote Harshcharit, which is the greatest of its resource to reconstruct the history of Vardhan dynasty altogether. However, Harsha is also said to have written three books, Naganand, Ratnavali and Pridarshika, Sanskrit books. Naganand, Ratnavali and Pridarshika. Just a moment. Let me show you. This is actually part of the Guptas, but I want to show you something else. Yes. So see, Naganand. Now, what was Naganand? It was a story of Prince Jibut Vahan. This might also be asked you what was the theme of Naganand. So Naganand, Ratnavali and Pridarshika was a Sanskrit plays written by Harsha. So now you can see Naganand described the story of the snake deity Jibut Vahan's self-sacrifice to save the Nagas. Alright. So Jibut Vahan's story is now mentioned there in the Naganand. Fine. Lord Buddha has also been invoked in the Nandi verse in this particular book called Naganand. You can understand that these books are taught in the Western universities but not in India. Again, an irony. So, Westerners know much more about Nagaland than the Indians. Fine. So, that is the story of Naga prince who was ready to sacrifice himself before Garud. That is in the story of Nagaland. Pridarshika, another story of another written point, written you can say script of, or written material of Harsha. See, Pridarshika has been first of all interpreted in English by G.K. Nariman, Williams Jackson, Charles Ogden, and they all have published this book, Pridarshika, very popular in Oxford, Columbia University, in fact. All right, so it is equally very famous there in US and European universities to read about Pridarshika. But in India, hardly it is taught, neither in school nor in universities. All right, that's another very irony for this country. Ratnavali. Ratnavali means precious garland. It's a Sanskrit drama with a beautiful princess named Ratnavali and a great king Udayan. So it's a drama between Ratnavali and Udayan, and that has been depicted in this particular book. The most important fact about this book is, for the first time, we get to the information of holy festival. So the first textual reference of holy festival in India comes from Ratnavali. This question can anytime be asked to you in prelims, that in which textbook or first textual reference of celebration of Holi is mentioned in which particular book. You need to remember it was Ratnavali, in which the festival of colors has been mentioned for the first time as a textual reference in India. That is Ratnavali. Fine. So that is about the Harsha's period. All right. So we'll end up the class here itself, and in the next class we'll take up the South Indian history completely. So probably one or two more classes will required to complete the story of South Indian history, and then ancient India will be done with. Fine. So see you on again Thursday. Fine. So Thursday will complete the story of South Indian history also. Fine. हाँ कुछ क्वेश्चन तो पूछ लीजिए. Have you solved the paper? वो current affairs वाला.
I will do it by Thursday, sir.
तो कर लो ताकि फिर मैं आंसर भेज दूं. Answer I have got received probably. I will see the my WhatsApp. So if answer is there, then I'll send it to you. But you before that you need to solve the paper. ठीक है तो सॉल्व कर लीजिए आज या कल सुबह तक. फिर मैं भेज दूंगा पेपर आपको. मैं आंसर भेज दूंगा ताकि यू कैन मैच विद देम. ऑलराइट. ठीक है, any other question you have? ठीक है, then let's conclude the class here itself. Again, I'll see you day after tomorrow. ठीक है, तो उसको complete करते हैं उस समय. Okay, then take care, bye bye, good night.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.